Ethan Chen had always been good at running away. Not physically, he'd never been athletic, much to his father's disappointment. But emotionally, mentally, he was an expert at building walls, changing subjects, and making himself invisible when things got uncomfortable. It was a survival skill he'd perfected over 19 years of being the quiet, studious son who kept his head down and his secrets closer. The bus rumbled beneath him as it carried him further from Lowe's Angels and deeper into the Montana wilderness. His mother had been horrified when he'd announced his summer plans. His father had simply grunted and returned to his newspaper, which somehow felt worse than an argument would have. Montana, his mother had repeated as if he'd said Mars. What will you do in Montana? There's nothing there. That was exactly the point. Ethan pressed his forehead against the cool window, watching the landscape transform from city sprawl to suburbs to farmland to something wild and untamed. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still dusted with snow despite it being June. He'd never seen mountains like these, not in pictures, not in movies, certainly not in person. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Another text from Marcus, his roommate at UCLA. They'd been talking about getting an apartment together for sophomore year, but Ethan had been dodging those conversations for weeks now. He didn't open the message. The ranch job had fallen into his lap almost by accident. Ethan had been scrolling through a summer work program website at 2 a.m., unable to sleep when he'd seen the listing. Summer ranch hand needed, room and board provided, experience with horses preferred but not required, must be willing to work hard and live simply. Something about those words, live simply, had called to him. He'd applied before he could talk himself out of it, never really expecting to hear back. But 2 days later, he'd gotten an email from someone named Dale Morrison, the ranch owner, asking for a phone interview. The conversation had been brief and to the point. Dale had a gravelly voice that suggested too many cigarettes and years of shouting over wind and distance. He'd asked Ethan exactly 3 questions. Could he handle physical labor? Was he okay with being isolated? And was he running from anything illegal? Ethan had answered yes, yes, and no. Dale had hired him on the spot. Now, 6 weeks later, Ethan was on a bus headed to a tiny town called Broken Creek, population 847 according to the faded welcome sign they'd passed an hour ago. His entire life was packed into 2 duffel bags in the overhead compartment. His parents thought he was being dramatic. His friends thought he was crazy. Ethan thought they might both be right. But when Marcus had kissed him at that party 3 months ago, drunk and laughing and careless, and Ethan had kissed him back, he'd felt something break open inside himself. Something that had been locked away for so long he'd almost forgotten it was there. Marcus had apologized the next morning, blamed the alcohol, laughed it off. Ethan had smiled and agreed and felt that familiar wall slam back into place. But the damage was done. He couldn't unknow what he'd felt in that moment. Couldn't unfeel the way his heart had raced, the way he'd wanted to pull Marcus closer instead of letting him go. He was 19 years old and he'd never been with anyone, never been kissed until that night, never let himself even think about what he wanted because wanting meant admitting and admitting meant everything would change. So he ran to Montana, to a ranch, to a place where nobody knew him and he could maybe finally figure out who he actually was. The bus pulled into Broken Creek just after sunset. The station was a bench outside a feed store with a hand-painted sign that said bus stop. 3 people got off with Ethan, an elderly woman who was immediately swept into the arms of what looked like her grandchildren, a businessman in an ill-fitting suit who climbed into a waiting sedan, and Ethan, who stood alone on the sidewalk with his 2 duffel bags, wondering what the hell he'd done. The main street was exactly 6 blocks long. Ethan could see the entire town from where he stood: a diner, a hardware store, a bar with a neon beer sign flickering in the window, a post office, a combination gas station and grocery store, and a handful of other buildings that might have been shops or might have been abandoned. It was impossible to tell in the fading light. Dale had said someone would pick him up. Ethan checked his phone, still no service, which was somehow both terrifying and liberating, and settled in to wait. He'd been standing there for maybe 10 minutes when he heard it, the rumble of an engine getting closer. Headlights appeared at the far end of the street and a truck turned the corner. Not a modern pickup, but something old and battered with more rust than paint and a passenger door that was a different color than the rest of the vehicle. The truck pulled up to the curb and the engine died with a cough that suggested it wouldn't start again without a fight. The driver's door opened, and Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The man who stepped out was nothing like he'd expected. Dale had sounded old on the phone, so Ethan had pictured someone weathered and gray. But this man couldn't have been more than 25. He was tall, at least 6'2", with broad shoulders and a lean, muscular build that spoke of years of physical labor. He wore scuffed work boots, faded jeans with a hole in one knee, and a plaid flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. But it was his face that made Ethan forget how to breathe. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw dusted with stubble, hair the color of wheat, a little too long, curling slightly at the ends, and eyes, even in the dim light, Ethan could see they were an impossible shade of blue-green like the ocean in a travel magazine. "You Ethan?" The man's voice was deeper than Dale's but smoother. There was a hint of a drawl to it, a lazy confidence that suggested he'd never been nervous a day in his life. "Why yeah," Ethan managed. "Ethan Chen." The man nodded and moved to grab one of Ethan's duffel bags. As he bent down, his flannel shirt gaped open slightly, and Ethan caught a glimpse of tanned skin and the defined lines of muscle beneath. He jerked his eyes away, face burning. "I'm Jesse," the man said, tossing the duffel into the truck bed with casual ease. "Dale's my uncle. He's dealing with a sick calf, so he sent me to grab you." He reached for the second bag, and Ethan noticed his hands calloused and strong with a thin white scar across the knuckles of his right hand. "Thanks," Ethan said, aware that he was starring but unable to stop. "I appreciate it." Jesse glanced at him and something flickered in those impossible eyes. Amusement, maybe, or curiosity. "You ever been on a ranch before?" "No." "Ever ridden a horse?" "No." "Ever done any kind of manual labor?" Ethan bristled slightly at that. "I worked at a bookstore for 2 years. Jesse's mouth twitched into something that might have been a smile. "Right, well, this'll be different," he gestured to the truck. "Come on, it's about 40 minutes to the ranch and these roads are hell in the dark." Ethan climbed into the passenger seat, which was covered in cracked leather and what looked like a decade's worth of dust. The interior smelled like hay and leather and something earthy he couldn't identify. Jesse slid behind the wheel and after 3 attempts got the engine to turn over. They drove in silence for the first 10 minutes, leaving the dim lights of Broken Creek behind and plunging into darkness so complete that Ethan couldn't see anything beyond the reach of the headlights. No streetlights, no houses, just road and darkness and the occasional reflection of animal eyes in the distance. "So," Jesse said finally, his eyes on the road, "what's a kid from California doing out here?" "How did you know I'm from California?" "Your email address, Ethan Cucla. Also, you look like you've never seen a dirt road in your life." There was that almost smile again. Ethan felt defensive color rise in his cheeks. "I needed a change." "From what?" "From everything." Jesse was quiet for a moment, navigating a turn that Ethan wouldn't have seen coming in a million years. Running from something or running to something? The question hit too close to home. Ethan looked out the window at the darkness. Does it matter? "Might ranch work is hard. If you're just running away, you'll be on the next bus out of here in a week. But if you're running towards something," Jesse shrugged, "might stick." "What about you?" Ethan asked, turning the question back. "You grow up here?" "Born and raised?" "Well, raised. I was born in Billings, but we moved to the ranch when I was 3. Been here ever since." "Don't you ever want to leave, see what else is out there?" Jesse glanced at him, and in the glow of the dashboard lights, Ethan saw something complex flicker across his face. "I did leave, went to Bozeman for college, studied agricultural science, thought I'd become some kind of consultant, travel around, make good money." He paused. "Lasted 2 years before I came back." "Why?" "Because this is home, and sometimes what you're looking for is right where you started." His voice had gone soft, almost sad. "Took me a while to figure that out." They fell into silence again, but it felt different now. Less awkward, more contemplative. Ethan found himself sneaking glances at Jesse's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his hands rested easy on the steering wheel. There was something magnetic about him, something that made Ethan want to keep looking even though he knew he shouldn't. Finally, Jesse turned off the main road onto what could barely be called a road at all, more like 2 tire tracks through grass and dirt. They bounced along for another 10 minutes before lights appeared in the distance. "Home sweet home," Jesse said. Broken Creek Ranch materialized out of the darkness like something from another era. The main house was a two-story log structure with a wraparound porch and warm light spilling from the windows. To the left stood a massive barn, its red paint faded to something closer to pink. Beyond that, Ethan could make out the dark shapes of other buildings. A stable, what looked like a bunkhouse, various sheds and structures he couldn't identify. Jesse parked near the main house and killed the engine. "Come on, I'll introduce you to Dale, then show you where you'll be staying." Ethan followed him up the porch steps, his legs stiff from the long bus ride and the bumpy truck journey. Jesse didn't knock, just pushed open the door and called out, "Uncle Dale, got your new hand." The interior of the house was exactly what Ethan expected. Worn furniture, mounted deer heads, a stone fireplace big enough to stand in. But it was also surprisingly cozy, with colorful quilts draped over the couch and family photos covering nearly every surface. Dale Morrison appeared from what looked like the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He was in his 60s, barrel-chested and bow-legged, with a face like weathered leather and eyes that assessed Ethan in a single glance. "So you made it," Dale said, his voice even more gravelly in person. "Jesse give you any trouble?" "No sir," Ethan said. "Don't call me sir, makes me feel old." "Dale's fine." He tossed the dish towel aside. "You look scrawny, Jesse." "He looks scrawny, we're gonna have to feed this one up." "I'm stronger than I look," Ethan protested. Dale's laugh was like gravel in a blender. "Sure you are. Well, we'll find out tomorrow, won't we?" "Jesse, show him to the bunkhouse. Maria left dinner for him in the kitchen, make sure he eats. Kid looks half-starved." "I'm not," Ethan started, but Jesse was already heading back outside. "Come on," Jesse called over his shoulder, "before Dale decides to adopt you and makes you call him uncle too." Ethan grabbed his bags and hurried after him. They crossed the yard to the bunkhouse, a long, low building that looked like it had been built sometime in the previous century. Jesse pushed open the door and flipped on a light, revealing a space that was surprisingly clean despite its age. There were 6 beds, 3 on each side, but only one looked occupied, rumpled sheets and a jacket tossed over the footboard. "That's mine," Jesse said, pointing to the occupied bed. "You can take any of the others. The guys who usually work here don't come until later in the summer, so it's just us for now." Just us, the words sent an unexpected thrill through Ethan's chest. Jesse showed him where everything was: the bathroom, ancient but functional, the small kitchen area, tiny fridge, hot plate, coffee maker, the closet-sized storage room. "It's not much," Jesse said, "but it's clean and dry, better than a tent anyway." "It's fine," Ethan said, dropping his bags on the bed nearest the window. "Really, I wasn't expecting luxury." Jesse leaned against the doorframe, watching as Ethan unzipped one of his bags. "So why'd you really come out here?" Ethan's hand stilled. "I told you I needed a change." "Yeah, but from what? Bad breakup, failed out of school, witness protection." Despite himself, Ethan laughed. "Nothing that dramatic." "Then what?" Ethan sat down on the bed, suddenly exhausted. The truth hovered on his tongue that he was running from himself, from the realization that had been building for years, from the kiss that had finally broken through all his defenses. But he couldn't say that, not to this stranger with the impossible eyes and the easy confidence. Ethan started, then stopped. "I needed to figure some things out, and I couldn't do that at home." Jesse nodded slowly, like he understood more than Ethan had said. "Well, you picked a good place for it, not much out here but space to think." He pushed off the doorframe. "Get settled, breakfast is at 5:30, don't be late or Dale will give your portion to the dogs. And fair warning, the work starts early and ends late and it's all hard. If you can't handle it, speak up now. No shame in realizing this life isn't for you." "I can handle it," Ethan said, lifting his chin. That almost smile appeared again. "We'll see." Jesse headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Ethan, welcome to Broken Creek Ranch, hope you find whatever you're looking for." Then he was gone, leaving Ethan alone in the quiet bunkhouse with nothing but his thoughts and the sound of crickets through the open window. Ethan lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Through the window, he could see more stars than he'd known existed, scattered across the sky like someone had spilled diamonds on black velvet. He thought about Marcus, about that kiss, about all the years he'd spent pretending, hiding, running. Maybe Jesse was right, maybe this place would help him figure things out. Or maybe he'd just traded one kind of hiding for another. Only time would tell. Ethan learned 3 things in his first week at Broken Creek Ranch. 1, he was definitely not as strong as he looked. 2. Ranch work was somehow both monotonous and terrifying. 3. Jesse Morrison was going to be a problem. Not because Jesse was unkind, quite the opposite. He was patient when Ethan struggled to saddle a horse, encouraging when Ethan managed to muck out a stall without incident, and only slightly amused when Ethan accidentally let all the chickens out of their coop. No, Jesse was a problem because Ethan couldn't stop looking at him. It started innocently enough. That first morning when Ethan had stumbled out of bed at 5:15 a.m., Jesse had already been up and dressed, making coffee in the tiny bunkhouse kitchen. He'd been wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, his hair still damp from a shower, and Ethan had frozen in the doorway like an idiot. "Morning," Jesse had said, not looking up from the coffee maker. "You want some?" Ethan had nodded, not trusting his voice. Since then, it had only gotten worse, because apparently ranch work involved a lot of situations where Jesse had to take his shirt off. It was too hot, the work was too dirty, he needed to wash up at the outdoor pump. Whatever the reason, Ethan found himself confronted daily with the sight of Jesse's bare torso, tanned and lean and marked with the kind of muscles that came from actual work, not a gym. And Ethan, who had never been attracted to anyone before Marcus, who had convinced himself that maybe he just wasn't interested in that sort of thing, discovered that he was very, very interested. Just not in a way he could do anything about. "You gonna stare all day, or you gonna help me with this fence?" Ethan jerked his attention back to the task at hand. They were repairing a section of fence in the south pasture which apparently involved digging post holes and hauling lumber and a lot of sweating in the June sun. Jesse was watching him with that knowing look, and Ethan felt heat rise to his face that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Sorry," Ethan muttered, spaced out. "Uh-huh," Jesse handed him one end of a wooden post. "Here, hold this while I secure it." They worked in silence for a while, falling into the rhythm they'd developed over the past week. Ethan had discovered that he liked the physical labor despite the aches and blisters. There was something satisfying about seeing tangible results: a clean stall, a mended fence, a well-groomed horse. "So," Jesse said, breaking the silence, "you gonna tell me yet?" "Tell you what?" "Whatever you're running from." Ethan's hands tightened on the post. "I'm not." "Yeah, you are, it's written all over you." Jesse drove a nail in with 3 efficient strikes. "And that's fine. Everyone's got their demons, but you've been here a week and you barely talk. You work hard, I'll give you that, but you're wound tighter than a drum. It's like you're waiting for something bad to happen." Ethan searched for words. "I'm just trying to figure things out." "Things like what?" "Like who I am, what I want, where I fit." The words came out before Ethan could stop them, raw and honest. Jesse was quiet for a moment, lining up another nail. "And you think you'll find that out here?" "I don't know, maybe. At least here nobody expects me to be anything I'm not." "What do people expect you to be back home?" Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Perfect, straight-A student, pre-med, future doctor, the son who makes his parents proud by becoming exactly what they want him to be." "But that's not what you want." "I don't know what I want, that's the problem." Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "Everyone else seems to have their whole lives figured out and I'm just lost." Jesse set down his hammer and looked at Ethan properly. Really looked at him in a way that made Ethan feel exposed and seen all at once. "You're 19, Jesse said quietly. "You're supposed to be lost. Anyone who thinks they have it all figured out at 19 is either lying or delusional." "Did you feel lost at 19? "Hell yeah, that's why I ran away to college, remember? Thought I needed to get away from here to figure out who I was." Jesse picked up his hammer again. "Turns out, all I needed was to be honest with myself about who I already was." "And who's that?" Jesse's smile was small and self-deprecating. "A cowboy who can't stand city life and is happiest when he's covered in dirt and horse shit. Not exactly prestigious." "It's honest though," Ethan said. "That's worth something." "Yeah, it is." Jesse's eyes met his and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. They finished the fence in companionable silence, and Ethan found himself thinking about honesty. About how long he'd been lying to himself, to his parents, to everyone. About how tired he was of pretending. That evening, after dinner and chores and the long shower he desperately needed, Ethan found Jesse on the porch of the bunkhouse, sitting on the steps and staring out at the stars. "Mind if I join you?" Ethan asked. Jesse scooted over, making room. "Free country." Ethan sat down close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The night air was cool after the heat of the day, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called out. "I've never seen so many stars," Ethan said, tilting his head back. "Light pollution," Jesse replied. "Once you get away from the cities, you can actually see what's up there. It's beautiful." "Yeah." They sat in silence for a while, just existing in each other's presence. Ethan felt something loosen in his chest, some knot of tension he'd been carrying for so long he'd forgotten it was there. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said finally. "Shoot." "Earlier when you said you needed to be honest with yourself, what did you mean?" Jesse was quiet for so long that Ethan thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, "I mean that I spent 2 years trying to be someone I wasn't. Dating girls I didn't care about, studying things that didn't interest me, pretending to want a life that looked good on paper but felt wrong in every way that mattered." Ethan's heart started to pound, "And when you came back?" "I decided to stop pretending, stop trying to fit into a box that was never made for me in the first place." Jesse turned to look at him, and in the starlight his eyes were impossibly soft. "I decided to just be and let the chips fall where they may." "Was it hard being honest with yourself?" "Hardest thing I've ever done." Jesse's smile was sad. "Still is some days, but it's better than the alternative." Ethan swallowed hard. What if being honest means losing everything, your family, your friends, the life you thought you'd have? "Then maybe those things weren't really yours to begin with." Jesse's voice was gentle. "Real family, real friends, they don't leave because you tell them the truth about who you are. They might need time to adjust, but they don't leave. And if they do, then they never really saw you in the first place. They were in love with a version of you that didn't exist." Jesse paused. "Is that what you're afraid of, that if people really knew you, they'd walk away?" Ethan felt his throat tighten. "Maybe." "Ethan," Jesse shifted to face him fully. "I've known you for a week and I can already tell you're running from something. But here's the thing, you can run all the way to Montana, to the middle of nowhere, to a place where nobody knows your name, but you can't run from yourself. Eventually, you have to stop and face whatever it is you're afraid of." "What if I'm not ready?" "Then you're not ready, but hiding doesn't make it go away. It just makes the reckoning harder when it finally comes." Ethan looked at him, at this man who had somehow become both stranger and confidant in the span of 7 days. "How are you so wise about this?" Jesse laughed, breaking the tension. "I'm not wise, I'm just a guy who learned these lessons the hard way and doesn't want to see someone else make the same mistakes." "What mistakes did you make?" "I wasted 2 years lying to myself and everyone around me, 2 years I can't get back." Jesse's expression turned serious. "Don't do that, Ethan. Don't waste your youth pretending to be someone you're not. Life's too short and too precious." They fell silent again, but Ethan's mind was racing. Jesse was talking about himself, about his own experiences, which meant... "Jesse," Ethan said quietly, I mean when you say you stopped pretending?" Jesse met his eyes. "I'm gay, if that's what you're asking." The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating and absolutely terrifying. Because hearing Jesse say them out loud made them real in a way they hadn't been before, made Ethan's own truth feel closer, more urgent. "How did you know?" Ethan whispered. "I always knew deep down, I just spent a lot of time convincing myself I was wrong." Jesse's smile was wry. "Turns out you can't logic yourself out of being gay. Believe me, I tried." "Were your parents, were they okay with it?" "My mom died when I was 15, cancer." Jesse's voice went soft with old grief. "But before she died, she told me something. She said, 'Jesse, whoever you love, whatever makes you happy, that's all that matters to me.' I think she knew even then." "And your dad?" "Took it harder. We didn't talk for about a year after I told him." Jesse stared out at the darkness. "But eventually he came around, said he'd rather have a gay son than no son at all. It's not perfect, but it's something." "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "Don't be. It taught me that the people worth keeping in your life are the ones who choose you, even when it's hard. Everyone else is just background noise." Ethan felt something crack open inside his chest, something he'd been holding closed with both hands for years. "I think I might be gay," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "No, I know I am, I've never said it out loud before." Jesse's hand found his in the darkness, warm and solid and real. "It's okay, you don't have to figure it all out tonight." "I kissed someone," Ethan continued, unable to stop now that he'd started. "Back at school, my roommate, he was drunk and it didn't mean anything to him, but it meant everything to me, and I realized I couldn't keep pretending anymore. That's why I came here, to figure out who I am when nobody's watching." "And have you figured it out?" Ethan looked at their joined hands, at Jesse's profile in the starlight, at the vast Montana sky spread out above them. "I'm starting to." Jesse squeezed his hand. "That's all any of us can do, start." They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, shoulders touching, existing in a moment of perfect understanding. Ethan felt lighter than he had in months, like numbing the truth out loud had somehow lessened its weight. "Thank you," he said finally. "For what?" "For being honest with me, for making me feel like it's okay to be honest too." Jesse turned to look at him, and Ethan saw something in his eyes that made his breath catch. "Ethan, out here under these stars with nobody but us and the coyotes, you can be exactly who you are, no judgment, no expectations, just you." "Just me," Ethan repeated, testing the words. "Just you," Jesse confirmed, "and for what it's worth, I think the real you is pretty great." Ethan felt heat rise to his face, but it wasn't embarrassment. It was something warmer, softer. Something that felt like hope. They stayed on the porch until the temperature dropped and the stars wheeled overhead, talking about everything and nothing. Jesse told him about growing up on the ranch, about his mother's garden and his father's stubborn pride. Ethan talked about the pressure of being the perfect son, the loneliness of keeping secrets, the relief of finally admitting the truth. When they finally went inside, Ethan felt changed somehow, like he'd left a piece of himself on that porch, the piece that had been so afraid of being seen. He fell asleep that night listening to Jesse's quiet breathing from across the bunkhouse, feeling safer and more himself than he had in years. And if he dreamed about blue-green eyes and calloused hands and a smile that made his heart race, well, that was between him and the Montana stars. The thing about ranch work, Ethan discovered, was that it forced you to be present. You couldn't daydream while mucking stalls or space out while handling livestock. One moment of inattention could mean injury to yourself, to the animals, to the fence you were supposed to be fixing. It was simultaneously exhausting and liberating. By the end of his second week, Ethan's hands had developed calluses and his muscles had stopped screaming quite so loudly. He could saddle a horse without Jesse's help, identify which cow was which by their markings, and had even learned to drive the ancient tractor, though he still white-knuckled the steering wheel the entire time. But more than the physical skills, he was learning something else: how to be comfortable in his own skin. It helped that Jesse was always there, patient and encouraging, and somehow knowing exactly when to push and when to back off. They fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side during the day and talking long into the night on the bunkhouse porch. Jesse told him about college, about the boyfriend he'd had for 6 months before realizing they wanted completely different things. About coming out to his father in the middle of an argument about whether Jesse would take over the ranch someday. About the loneliness of being gay in a town of 847 people, where everyone knew everyone and secrets were impossible to keep. "Doesn't it bother you?" Ethan asked one night, watching Jesse clean his fingernails with a pocket knife. "Being so isolated, not having anyone to, I don't know, date?" Jesse shrugged. "Sometimes, but I'd rather be alone and honest than in a relationship built on lies. Been there, done that, got the scars to prove it." "So you just gave up on finding someone?" "Didn't say that, I just stopped looking in the wrong places." Jesse glanced at him, something unreadable in his expression. "Sometimes the right person shows up when you least expect it." Ethan's heart did a complicated flip in his chest. They'd been dancing around something for days now, this pull between them that Ethan felt but didn't know how to name. Jesse would touch his shoulder to correct his grip on a tool, and Ethan's skin would burn for hours. Their eyes would meet across the barn, and Ethan would forget how to breathe. He told himself it was just a crush. That Jesse was the first openly gay person he'd really known, the first person he'd been honest with about himself, Of course, he was developing feelings. It was natural, understandable. It didn't mean anything. Except it felt like it meant everything. On a Saturday afternoon in his third week, Jesse announced they were taking the horses out to check the fence line in the northern pasture. "It's about a 2-hour ride," Jesse said, already saddling his horse, a massive bay gelding named Goliath. "We'll take lunch, make a day of it. You comfortable enough on Daisy to handle the trail?" Daisy was Ethan's usual mount, a sweet-tempered mare who seemed to understand that Ethan was still learning. "Yeah," Ethan said, trying to sound confident. "I can do it." Jesse's smile was approving. "Good, you've come a long way from the kid who couldn't tell a bridle from a halter." They set out under a cloudless sky, following a narrow trail that wound through pine forests and across open meadows dotted with wildflowers. Ethan had never seen country like this, vast and wild and so beautiful it almost hurt to look at. "It's incredible," he said, pulling Daisy to a stop on a ridge that overlooked a valley. "How do you not just spend all day staring at this?" Jesse reined in beside him. "Some days I do, that's the luxury of living here, the view never gets old." He pointed to a line of mountains in the distance. "Those are the Crazies, and over there that's the river. It runs through our property for about 3 miles. Can you swim in it?" "Oh yeah, it's freezing even in summer, but it's great on a hot day." Jesse's eyes lit up. "We should go sometime, after work one evening." The casual use of "we" made Ethan's stomach flutter. "I'd like that." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the creak of leather and the soft thud of hooves on packed earth. Ethan found himself watching Jesse, the easy way he sat in the saddle, the confidence in every movement. "You're starring again," Jesse said without looking at him. Ethan flushed. "Sorry." "Don't apologize, I didn't say I minded." Jesse turned to look at him then, and the expression on his face made Ethan's heart race. "I stare at you too, you know." "You do." "All the time when you're not looking." Jesse's smile was soft, almost shy. "When you're concentrating on something, you get this little crease between your eyebrows, and when you laugh, really laugh, not that polite thing you do, your whole face lights up. It's..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Never mind." "It's what?" Jesse looked away, back at the mountains. "It's beautiful, you're beautiful." The words hung in the air between them, impossible to take back. Ethan felt like all the oxygen had left his lungs. "Jesse." "We should keep moving," Jesse said, his voice suddenly gruff. "Dale wants that fence line checked before dark." He urged Goliath forward, and Ethan had no choice but to follow, his mind spinning with those 3 words, "You're beautiful." They found the break in the fence an hour later, a section where a fallen tree had taken down about 20 feet of wire. Jesse surveyed the damage with his hands on his hips. "Well, that's not getting fixed today. We'll need to come back with proper tools and supplies." He pulled out his phone, which somehow had service out here, and took photos of the damage. "At least the cattle haven't found it yet." They ate lunch sitting on a flat rock overlooking a stream, sharing the sandwiches Maria had packed for them. The silence between them felt charged now, electric with unspoken things. "Ethan," Jesse said finally, setting down his sandwich, "about what I said before." "You don't have to take it back," Ethan interrupted, "unless you want to." "I don't want to," Jesse met his eyes. "But I also don't want to make you uncomfortable. You're still figuring things out and I don't want to complicate that." "What if I want it complicated?" Jesse's breath hitched. "Do you?" Ethan thought about lying, about playing it safe, but he was so tired of safe. "I've never felt like this before," he admitted. "About anyone, and it's terrifying, but it's also, I don't want to run from it anymore." "What do you want?" "I don't know, I've never..." Ethan felt his face burn. "I've never been with anyone, never even kissed anyone except that one time with Marcus, and that doesn't count because he was drunk and it was a mistake." "It wasn't a mistake for you though," Jesse said gently. "No, it made me realize I couldn't keep lying to myself." Ethan picked at the wrapper of his sandwich. "But I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know how any of this works." Jesse moved closer until their shoulders were touching. "There's no right way to do this, you just feel your way through it." "Is that what you're doing, feeling your way?" "Yeah," Jesse's hand found his fingers intertwining. I told myself I wouldn't do this, that you needed space to figure yourself out without someone like me complicating things, but then you showed up and you're smart and funny and so much braver than you think you are and He stopped, laughed self-consciously. I like you, Ethan, a lot, and I don't know what to do about that. Ethan's heart was pounding so hard he was sure Jesse could hear it. Maybe you don't have to do anything, maybe we just see what happens. And if what happens is I fall for you, then maybe I fall too. Jesse turned to face him fully, and the look in his eyes made Ethan feel like he was standing on the edge of something vast and wonderful and terrifying. Can I kiss you? Jesse asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. Jesse cupped his face with one hand, thumb brushing across Ethan's cheekbone. Then he leaned in, slowly, giving Ethan every chance to pull away. Ethan didn't pull away. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, just a gentle pressure of lips against lips. But then Ethan made a small sound in the back of his throat and Jesse deepened the kiss, his other hand coming up to tangle in Ethan's hair. It was nothing like kissing Marcus. That had been messy and tasted like beer and regret. This was deliberate and sweet and tasted like sunshine and promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ethan felt like the world had shifted on its axis. Oh, he breathed. Jesse's smile was radiant. Yeah, oh. They sat there for a long moment, foreheads pressed together, hands clasped. I've never felt anything like that, Ethan admitted. Neither have I, Jesse said, and I've kissed my share of people. Really? Really? Jesse pulled back slightly to look at him. That was special, Ethan, you're special. Ethan felt tears prick at his eyes, though he couldn't have said why. I'm scared, he whispered. Me too, Jesse kissed his forehead, gentle and reassuring. But maybe that's okay, maybe being scared means it matters. They rode back to the ranch as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Ethan felt different somehow, lighter, more present, more alive. Like he'd finally stopped running and started living. The thing about secrets, Ethan learned, was that they were easier to keep when no one was looking. But on a ranch with only a handful of people, privacy was a luxury. Dale didn't say anything, but Ethan caught him watching them sometimes. The way Jesse's hand would linger on Ethan's shoulder, the way they'd disappear together after dinner and not return until the stars were out. If Dale had opinions, he kept them to himself. Maria, the cook who came 3 times a week to prepare meals and clean the main house, was less subtle. You two seem close, she said one afternoon, cornering Ethan in the kitchen while he was getting water. Ethan nearly choked. We're friends. Maria's smile was knowing. Friends like I'm friends with my husband. Maria. Mijo, I have eyes and I've known Jesse since he was in diapers, she patted his arm. Whatever is happening between you two, it's making him happy. I haven't seen him smile like that in years, so thank you. She left before Ethan could formulate a response. That evening, as he and Jesse sat on their usual spot on the bunkhouse porch, Ethan relayed the conversation. Jesse laughed. Maria's always been perceptive, and nosy, mostly nosy. Does it bother you that people are noticing? Should it? Ethan thought about that. A month ago, the thought of anyone knowing about his sexuality would have sent him into a panic. But now, sitting here with Jesse's arm around his shoulders, he found he didn't care as much as he thought he would. No, he said finally, I guess not. Good, because I'm not real interested in hiding. Jesse's voice was gentle but firm. I did that for too long, I won't do it again even for someone I care about. I'm not asking you to hide. I know, I just wanted to make sure you knew that's not who I am anymore. Jesse pressed a kiss to his temple. If this thing between us is going to work, it has to be honest, out in the open, no sneaking around, no pretending we're just friends. What is this thing between us? Ethan asked. Jesse was quiet for a moment. What do you want it to be? I don't know, I've never done this before, I don't even know what the options are. Well, we could keep it casual, just see where things go, no pressure, no expectations. Is that what you want? Not even a little bit? Jesse turned to look at him, eyes serious. I want to take you on dates, I want to hold your hand and kiss you goodnight and wake up next to you. I want to introduce you as my boyfriend, not my friend who's helping out for the summer. But I also know that might be moving too fast for you and I don't want to push. Ethan's heart was doing complicated acrobatics in his chest. What if I want that too, even though it scares me? Then we do it scared, Jesse's smile was soft, together. Together, Ethan repeated, testing the word. He liked the sound of it. Jesse leaned in and kissed him, slow and sweet, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like coming home. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a pattern. Work during the day, hard physical labor that left them both exhausted and satisfied. Then dinner with Dale, who had started setting 3 places at the table instead of making them eat in the bunkhouse. Then time alone together, learning each other in the way new couples do. Jesse taught Ethan about the ranch, about reading the weather and understanding the land. He showed him where the best fishing spots were, where the wild strawberries grew, where to watch the sunset for maximum impact. Ethan taught Jesse about literature and art and the world beyond Montana. He read to him in the evenings, old favorites like Steinbeck and new discoveries like Ocean Vuong. They talked about everything and nothing, building a foundation of shared moments and inside jokes. And they kissed a lot. In the barn, pressed against the hay bales, in the cab of the old truck on the way to town for supplies, under the stars on their porch until they were both breathless and wanting. But they didn't go further than that. Ethan wasn't ready and Jesse never pushed. "We have time," Jesse would say, pulling back when things got too heated. "There's no rush." "What if I want to rush?" Ethan asked one night, frustrated with his own fear. "Then we'll rush when you're actually ready, not when you think you should be ready. There's a difference." Jesse kissed his nose. "Your first time should be special, Ethan, not something you do because you think it's expected." "Have you? I mean, how many people have you?" Jesse laughed. "Are you asking about my sexual history? Maybe is that weird?" "No, it's normal. Let's see. I've slept with 4 people, 3 guys, 1 girl. That was before I accepted I was gay. Only one of them actually meant anything to me. The boyfriend from college." "Yeah, Marcus, different Marcus from your Marcus." Jesse's expression grew distant. "We were together for 6 months. I thought I loved him. Turns out I loved the idea of him more than the actual person." "What happened?" "He wanted to move to Seattle after graduation. I wanted to come back here. Neither of us was willing to compromise, so we ended it." Jesse shrugged. "It hurt at the time, but looking back, I think we both knew it wasn't going to last. We wanted different lives." "Do you ever regret it, choosing the ranch over him?" "Not for a second. This is who I am, Ethan. I'm a cowboy. I belong here under these skis doing this work. Anyone who can't accept that isn't right for me." Jesse pulled him closer. "What about you? What do you want after the summer, I mean?" Ethan had been trying not to think about that. The summer had an expiration date. He was supposed to go back to UCLA in September, continue his pre-med studies, live the life his parents expected. But that life felt increasingly foreign to him now, like a suit that didn't fit anymore. "I don't know," he admitted. "I thought I wanted to be a doctor. That's what I've been working toward since high school, but lately I'm not sure if that's what I want or what my parents want for me." "What would you do if you could do anything, if there were no expectations, no pressure?" Ethan thought about it. "I'd write. I've always loved writing stories, poetry, essays, but that's not practical. You can't make a living as a writer." "Some people do." "Not most people, and my parents would never." He stopped. "I'm doing it again, worrying about what they think instead of what I want." "It's hard not to. They're your parents. You love them. You want them to be proud of you." Jesse kissed his forehead. "But at some point you have to decide if you're living for them or for yourself." "When did you decide?" "The day I came out to my dad. He was so angry, so disappointed. And I realized that I could spend the rest of my life trying to be the son he wanted, or I could be myself and hope he'd eventually come around." Jesse's voice was soft. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most freeing." "What if they never come around? What if I lose them?" "Then you'll grieve that loss and it'll hurt like hell, but you'll survive, and you'll build a new family, chosen family who loves you for exactly who you are." Jesse took his hand. "I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying it's worth it." Ethan leaned against him, drawing comfort from the solid warmth of Jesse's body. "I'm not ready to tell them yet." "That's okay. You don't have to be ready today, or tomorrow, or even this year. This is your journey, Ethan. You get to decide the timeline." "What if I'm never ready?" Then that's your choice too, but I think you're braver than you know. You came all the way out here, didn't you? Left everything familiar behind to figure yourself out. That takes guts. Or desperation. Sometimes they're the same thing. Jesse stood, pulling Ethan up with him. Come on, I want to show you something. They walked across the dark ranch, Jesse leading the way with a flashlight. They passed the barn, the stable, the equipment shed, and kept going until they reached a small building Ethan had noticed but never entered. What is this place? Ethan asked as Jesse unlocked the door. My dad's old workshop. He was a woodworker in his spare time, made furniture, cabinets, little decorative things. Jesse flipped on the light, revealing a space filled with tools and half-finished projects. After he died, Dale kept it exactly as it was, said it felt wrong to change it. Your dad died too. Ethan had known about Jesse's mother, but this was news. 2 years ago, heart attack. He was only 58. Jesse ran his hand along a workbench. We'd finally gotten to a good place, you know. After years of being distant, we were actually talking again, and then he was just gone. I'm so sorry. Yeah, me too. Jesse picked up a small wooden box, turned it over in his hands. He made this for me when I came out, didn't give it to me until a year later after we started speaking again. Inside, there's a note that says, for keeping your treasures safe, love, Dad. Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. That's beautiful. He wasn't good with words, but he tried in his way. Jesse set the box down carefully. I brought you here because I want you to understand something. My dad and I wasted years because of his pride and my fear, and when he died I had all these things I wished I'd said, wished I'd done, all this time I wished we'd had back. You're saying I shouldn't wait to talk to my parents. I'm saying that life is short and uncertain and the people we love don't last forever. If you want a relationship with your parents, a real, honest one, eventually you'll have to risk telling them the truth. Jesse turned to face him, but that's your choice to make and I'll support you either way. Ethan pulled him into a hug, burying his face in Jesse's shoulder. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For being patient with me, for not pushing, for just being you. Jesse held him tighter. That's easy. Being with you is the easiest thing I've ever done. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other, surrounded by the ghosts of Jesse's past and the uncertain promise of their future. When they finally walked back to the bunkhouse, hand in hand under the stars, Ethan felt something shift inside him. A quiet certainty, fragile but growing stronger. He didn't have all the answers yet, didn't know what he'd say to his parents or what would happen when summer ended. But he knew this, what he felt for Jesse was real, worth protecting, worth fighting for. Everything else they'd figure out together. Chapter 5, The Storm. July arrived with a heat wave that turned the ranch into an oven. The work became harder, the days longer. Ethan had developed a proper tan for the first time in his life, and muscles he hadn't known existed now defined his arms and chest. You look good, Jesse said one morning, watching Ethan pull on a t-shirt. Healthy, happy. I feel good. Ethan realized it was true. Despite the hard work and early mornings, he felt more alive than he ever had in California. But happiness, he was learning, was fragile. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Ethan was helping Jesse repair a gate when his phone buzzed, surprising, because cell service at the ranch was spotty at best. It was his mother. He almost didn't answer, but guilt and habit won out. Hello. Ethan, his mother's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. Where are you? I told you, Montana, working on a ranch. Don't lie to me. Your father called the university. They said you withdrew from the summer pre-med program. Ethan's stomach dropped. He'd forgotten about that, caught up in the rhythm of ranch life. I can explain. You withdrew without telling us. Do you know how much we paid for that program, how much we sacrificed? Mom. And for what? To play cowboy in Montana, to throw away your future. Jesse had stopped working, was watching him with concern. I'm not throwing anything away, Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm just taking time to figure things out. Figure what out? Your future is already planned. Medical school, residency, a good career. What is there to figure out? Maybe I don't want to be a doctor. The words came out louder than he'd intended. Jesse touched his arm gently, but Ethan pulled away, packing. Don't be ridiculous, his mother said. Of course you want to be a doctor, you've wanted that since you were 10 years old. No, you wanted that, you and Dad, I just went along with it because it made you happy. Ethan Chen, I did not raise you to be selfish and ungrateful. I'm not being selfish, I'm trying to figure out who I am. You're 19 years old, you don't know who you are, that's why you have parents to guide you. Ethan felt something snap inside him. All the fear, all the years of hiding, all the resentment he'd been swallowing down came rushing up. I'm gay, he said. Silence long and terrible. What did you say? His mother's voice was barely a whisper. I'm gay, Mom. I've known for a while and I came out here to figure out how to live with that truth, to figure out who I am without all the pressure and expectations. No, his mother's voice had gone cold. No, you're confused. This is what happens when you spend time away from family, away from proper guidance. You get ideas. It's not an idea, it's who I am. You don't know what you are, you're 19, you're confused, you're being influenced by, she paused. Is there someone there? Is someone putting these thoughts in your head? Ethan looked at Jesse, who had gone very still. Yes, there's someone, his name is Jesse and he's amazing and I don't want to hear it. His mother's voice was shaking now. You come home right now, we'll find you a good therapist, someone who can help you work through this confusion. I'm not confused. Ethan, this is not acceptable. This is not who we raised you to be, our family, our community, what will people think? And there it was, the thing he'd always known but had been too afraid to confront. His parents cared more about appearances than about him. I don't care what people think, Ethan said quietly. I care about being honest, about being myself. If you don't come home right now and put an end to this nonsense, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? We'll cut you off, no more tuition money, no more support, you'll be on your own. Ethan felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. You'd really do that, disown your own son for being gay? I'm trying to save you from making a terrible mistake. If you choose this lifestyle over your family, over your future, then you're making that choice yourself. You're the one making the choice, Mom. You're choosing your pride over your son. How dare you? Ethan hung up. His hands were shaking so badly he nearly dropped the phone. He stood there, staring at the device like it was a bomb that had just gone off, destroying everything he'd once known. Ethan, Jesse's voice was soft. Hey, look at me. Ethan turned and the concern in Jesse's eyes broke something open in his chest. He started to cry big, ugly sobs that he couldn't control. Jesse caught him as his knees buckled, holding him up, holding him together. I've got you, Jesse murmured into his hair. I've got you, you're okay. I told them, I didn't mean to, but I know SHH, it's okay, you're okay. They sank down onto the ground together, Ethan curled into Jesse's chest, Jesse's arms wrapped around him like a shield against the world. She said they'll cut me off, Ethan gasped between sobs. No more tuition, no more support, I'll have nothing. You'll have yourself, you'll have the truth, that's not nothing. What am I going to do? I can't afford school on my own, I can't. We'll figure it out, Jesse's voice was firm, certain. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together. Why are you being so nice to me? I just made a mess of everything. Because I love you, you idiot. Ethan froze, pulled back to look at Jesse's face, certain he'd misheard. But Jesse wasn't backing down, his eyes were bright, fierce. I love you, Ethan, I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I do. And I'm not going to let you go through this alone. You love me. Yeah, pretty much since the day you showed up looking like a lost puppy. Jesse wiped tears from Ethan's cheeks with his thumbs. You don't have to say it back, I just needed you to know that you're not alone in this. Ethan kissed him, hard and desperate and full of everything he couldn't say yet. When they broke apart, Jesse rested his forehead against Ethan's. Come on, let's go talk to Dale. Why? Because you need to know you have options, and because my uncle might be a gruff old cowboy, but he's also been known to help people in tough spots. They found Dale in his office, a cramped room off the main house filled with papers and feed catalogs. He took one look at Ethan's tear-stained face and sighed. Let me guess, your parents found out about you and Jesse. Ethan blinked. You knew. Kid, I've got eyes and I was young once, believe it or not. Dale leaned back in his chair. So what happened? Ethan explained the phone call, the ultimatum, the threat to cut him off. Dale listened without interrupting. When Ethan finished, he was quiet for a long moment, staring at something on his desk. "Your parents religious?" he finally asked. "Not particularly, they're just traditional, conservative. They care a lot about what other people think." Those types are sometimes harder to crack than the religious ones. At least with religion, there's a chance for redemption, forgiveness, all that. But pride? Dale shook his head. Pride's a stubborn thing. "So what do I do?" "Well, first thing, you stop crying. You made the right choice. Telling them the truth might not feel like it now, but you did." Dale pulled open a drawer, rifled through some papers. "Second thing, you decide what you want. Stay here, go back, something else entirely." I don't know." "Then you got some thinking to do, but while you're thinking, you should know job's yours as long as you want it. Room, board, and a salary. It's not much, but it's honest work." "You're offering me a permanent job." "Why not? You're a good worker, you learn fast, you don't complain, and you make Jesse smile more than I've seen in years. That's worth something in my book." Ethan felt tears threatening again. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet, think about it. You got the rest of the summer to decide what you want your life to look like." Dale stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "But know this, you got people here who care about you, who accept you, that's not nothing." As they walked back to the bunkhouse, Jesse took his hand. "You okay?" Jesse asked. "I don't know, I feel like my whole life just imploded." "It didn't implode, it just changed direction." Jesse squeezed his hand. "Change is scary, but it's not always bad." "What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm throwing away my future For what? For being yourself? For being honest?" Jesse stopped walking, turned to face him. "Ethan, listen to me. Your parents might come around eventually, or they might not. That's on them, not you. But whatever happens, you can't live your life trying to be someone you're not just to make other people comfortable." "But medical school, was that ever really your dream, or was it theirs?" Ethan thought about it, really thought about it. "I don't know, maybe both at first, but lately, I've been happier here doing this work than I ever was studying organic chemistry." "Then maybe this is where you're supposed to be. Maybe all of this, taking the job, coming here, meeting me, maybe it was supposed to happen." "You really believe that things happen for a reason?" "I believe that sometimes the universe gives us exactly what we need, even if it's not what we planned for." Jesse smiled. "I definitely wasn't planning for you, but I'm really glad you're here." "I love you too," Ethan blurted out. "I know I didn't say it before, but I do, I love you." Jesse's smile could have lit up the entire state of Montana. "Yeah. Yeah, I've never felt this way about anyone. It's terrifying and amazing, and I don't want to lose it." "You won't, I promise." Jesse pulled him close. "We're in this together, remember." "Together," Ethan echoed. They spent the evening on their porch talking about options and futures and possibilities. Jesse told him about ranch life year-round, about the harsh winters and the quiet beauty of snow-covered fields, about the community in Broken Creek, small but generally accepting, about the challenges of being gay in rural Montana, but also the freedoms of living somewhere you could be yourself without apology. "Would you be okay with me staying?" Ethan asked as the stars came out. "If I decided to stay here instead of going back to school?" "I'd be more than okay with it, but it has to be your choice, not mine. I don't want you resenting me in 5 years because you gave up your dreams for me." "What if my dreams changed? What if being here with you is the dream now?" Jesse kissed him softly. "Then I'd say you should follow that dream and see where it leads." They made love for the first time that night, slow and tender and full of whispered promises. Ethan had been nervous, uncertain, but Jesse was patient and careful and made him feel safe. Afterward, lying tangled together in Jesse's narrow bed, Ethan felt something settle in his chest, a peace he'd never known before. "No regrets?" Jesse asked, running his fingers through Ethan's hair. "Not a single one." The next few weeks were hard. Ethan's parents called repeatedly, leaving increasingly angry voicemails. His father got on the phone once, his voice cold and distant, demanding Ethan come to his senses. Ethan didn't call back. It hurt more than he'd expected. Even though he'd known they might react badly, some part of him had hoped they'd surprise him, choose him over their pride. But they didn't. Jesse was there through all of it, steady and supportive. So was Dale in his gruff way. Even Maria got involved, bringing extra food and telling Ethan stories about her own children, one of whom had come out as lesbian and was now happily married to a woman Maria described as the daughter I always wanted. Families are complicated, Maria told him one afternoon, but the ones who really love you find a way to get past their own stuff. Give them time, they might surprise you. Ethan wanted to believe her, but as the days turned into weeks with no sign of softening from his parents, he began to accept that this might be permanent. And strangely, he was okay with that. Because he had something he'd never had before, a life that was his own. Days spent doing work that mattered, nights spent with someone who loved him, a community that accepted him without conditions. In mid-August, he made his decision. "I'm staying," he told Dale over breakfast. "If the offer's still open, I want to take the job permanently." Dale's smile was small but genuine. "About damn time, Jesse's been mopping around like a lost calf, worried you'd leave." "I wasn't mopping," Jesse protested from across the table. "You were absolutely mopping," Maria chimed in, "like a character in one of those telenovelas." Jesse threw a biscuit at her. That afternoon, Ethan called UCLA and officially withdrew for the fall semester. It felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and liberating all at once. "You sure about this?" Jesse asked as they worked together in the barn. "I'm sure. I can always go back to school later if I want to, but right now, this is where I need to be." "And what about your parents?" Ethan had been thinking about that. "I'm going to write them a letter, tell them I love them, that I hope they can accept me someday, but that I'm done trying to be someone I'm not. If they want a relationship with me, it'll have to be on honest terms." "That's brave. I learned from the best." Jesse pulled him into a kiss, heedless of the fact that they were standing in the middle of the barn where anyone could see. Ethan didn't care anymore. He wrote the letter that night, pouring everything into it, his love for them, his pain at their rejection, his hope for reconciliation, but also his firm boundary that he wouldn't hide who he was anymore. He mailed it the next day and tried not to think about whether they'd read it. Life settled into a new rhythm. Ethan learned more about ranching, about animal husbandry and land management, and the thousands small tasks that kept the place running. He was good at it, he discovered. Not just capable but actually skilled. "You've got a natural talent for this," Dale told him one day, watching Ethan calm a spooked horse. "Some people can work a ranch their whole lives and never develop that kind of connection with animals." The compliment warmed him more than he'd expected. As September approached, bringing cooler weather and the first hints of fall, Ethan realized he was happy, genuinely, deeply happy in a way he'd never been before. He and Jesse had moved into a small cabin on the far edge of the property, Dale's idea, giving them privacy while keeping them close enough to help with the ranch. It was tiny, barely more than one room with a bathroom, but it was theirs. They decorated it together, mixing Jesse's rustic furniture with books Ethan ordered online and art prints that reminded him of home. It became a perfect blend of both of them, rough-hewn wood and poetry, cowboy boots and literary journals. "I can't believe this is my life," Ethan said one evening, curled up with Jesse on their second-hand couch. "Good can't believe or bad can't believe." "Good, definitely good," Ethan kissed his jaw. "A year ago I was miserable and closeted and had no idea who I was. Now I'm here with you, doing work I love, living honestly. It's like a dream." "Well, don't wake up, I'm quite fond of this dream." In late September, two things happened. First, Marcus, Ethan's roommate from UCLA, reached out via email. He'd heard through mutual friends that Ethan had withdrawn and he wanted to check in. Ethan stared at the email for a long time before responding. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to leave that part of his life firmly in the past. But Marcus had been kind to him, even if that kiss had been meaningless to Marcus while meaning everything to Ethan. He wrote back, keeping it brief. He was fine, had found a new direction, was happy. He didn't mention Jesse or being gay. It wasn't Marcus's business. Marcus's reply was warm and supportive. He said he was glad Ethan was happy, and if he ever wanted to talk, Marcus was there. Ethan appreciated the gesture, even if he doubted he'd take Marcus up on it. The second thing was more significant. A letter arrived from his mother. Ethan stared at the envelope for a full minute before opening it, his heart pounding. Dear Ethan, your father and I received your letter. It has taken us some time to process what you wrote. I won't lie and say we understand or that we're happy about your choices. This is not the life we imagined for you. However, you are still our son, and while we may not agree with your lifestyle, we don't want to lose you entirely. Your Aunt Lynn spoke with us. She reminded us that family is more important than pride. She also mentioned that she has a friend whose son is gay and happy and successful, which apparently means this is not the disaster we thought it was. I'm not saying we're ready to meet this Jesse person or attend any pride parades, but we would like to maintain contact with you. Perhaps we could talk on the phone once a week, and maybe, eventually, you could visit for the holidays. It's not everything you might have hoped for, I know, but it's what we can offer right now. We do love you, Ethan, even when we don't understand you. Love, Mom. Ethan read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't full acceptance, but it was something, a crack in the door, a possibility of reconciliation. Jesse found him sitting on the cabin steps, letter in hand, crying. Bad news? Jesse asked carefully. No, good news actually, or at least better news. Ethan handed him the letter. Jesse read it, his expression softening. This is great, Ethan. Is it? They still don't accept me, they're just willing to tolerate me. It's a start, and sometimes that's all you can ask for. Jesse sat beside him. My dad started with tolerance too. It took time to get to acceptance, but it did happen. What if it never happens for my parents? Then you'll have to decide if you can live with that, but at least they're trying. That's more than a lot of LGBTQ plus kids get. Ethan leaned against him. I want to try to have a relationship with them even if it's complicated. Then try, and if it doesn't work out, you've lost nothing, but if it does, Jesse kissed his temple, you might gain back your family. Ethan called his mother that weekend. The conversation was stilted and awkward, full of long pauses and careful tiptoeing around difficult subjects. But it was a conversation, it was something. They agreed to talk once a week. His mother promised to work on his father to help him understand. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. Winter came early to Montana that year. By mid-October, frost coated the ground in the mornings, and by early November, the first snow fell. Ethan had never experienced a real winter before. California's idea of cold was laughable compared to Montana's frigid temperatures and biting wind. But Jesse made sure he was prepared: proper boots, insulated jackets, layers upon layers of clothing. You'll get used to it, Jesse promised as Ethan shivered through his first below-zero morning. Will I though? Ethan's teeth were chattering. Yes, and when spring comes, you'll appreciate it more than anyone who's never survived a Montana winter. The ranch work changed with the seasons. Instead of fence repair and pasture rotation, they focused on keeping animals fed and watered, on ensuring the barn was properly insulated, on stockpiling supplies for when the roads became impassable. It was hard work made harder by the cold, but there was also a beauty to it. The way snow transformed the landscape into something magical, the quiet of winter mornings, the coziness of coming inside after hours in the cold. Ethan and Jesse's cabin became a sanctuary. They'd installed a wood stove, and most evenings found them curled up together, reading or talking or simply existing in comfortable silence. The weekly phone calls with his mother continued. They were still awkward, still carefully controlled, but slowly they began to thaw. She asked about his work. He told her about the ranch. She shared news about his younger sister. He asked how his father was doing. In December, his mother mentioned that maybe, if Ethan wanted, he could come home for Chinese New Year in January. Really? Ethan had been shocked. You'd want me to visit? Your father and I discussed it. We think it's time, but, she paused, perhaps just you for now. We're not ready to meet Jesse yet. It stung, but Ethan understood. Baby steps. He told Jesse about the invitation that evening. You should go, Jesse said immediately. But it means leaving you for Chinese New Year. That's like 2 weeks. I'll survive. This is important, Ethan. This is your chance to rebuild your relationship with your family. Jesse pulled him close. I want that for you, even if it means I miss you like crazy. You're too good to me. I'm exactly as good as you deserve. Ethan booked the flight for mid-January. As the date approached, he felt increasingly nervous. What if seeing his parents in person ruined the fragile peace they'd built? What if they tried to convince him to stay in California? Just be yourself, Jesse advised. That's all you can do. The night before his flight, they lay in bed together, Jesse's arms wrapped around him. "I'm going to miss you so much," Ethan whispered. "Miss you too, but you'll be back before you know it." "What if something changes while I'm gone? What if I come back and you've realized you're better off without me?" Jesse laughed softly. "Not possible. You're stuck with me, Chen, for as long as you want me. Forever then. Works for me." The visit to California was complicated. His parents were polite but distant at first. His father barely spoke to him. His mother tried too hard to act normal. His sister, now 16, was the only one who seemed genuinely happy to see him. "You look different," Lily said, hugging him tight. "Happy, like actually happy." "I am," Ethan admitted. "Good, you were always so tense before, like you were about to snap." Over the 2 weeks, things slowly improved. His mother asked more questions about his life, what he did on the ranch, what the town was like, whether he was making enough money. "I'm not getting rich," Ethan admitted, "but I have everything I need and I'm happy. That has to count for something." His father remained largely silent, but Ethan caught him watching sometimes, his expression unreadable. On the last night, as Ethan was packing to leave, his father knocked on his door. "Can I come in?" Ethan nodded, surprised. His father sat on the bed, looking uncomfortable. He was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "I don't understand this life you've chosen," he said finally. "The ranch, the boyfriend, it's not what I wanted for you." "I know. But your mother is right, you are still our son, and," he cleared his throat, "you do seem happy, healthier, more yourself than I've ever seen you." Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. "Dad. I'm trying, Ethan, to understand, to accept. It's not easy for me, but I'm trying. Yeah. That's all I can ask for." His father nodded, stood up, then awkwardly pulled Ethan into a brief hug. "Be safe, come visit again." "I will." The flight back to Montana felt different than the flight out had. Lighter somehow, like he'd let go of something heavy he'd been carrying. Jesse picked him up at the tiny airport in Billings, pulling him into a kiss right there in arrivals, heedless of who might see. "Missed you," Jesse murmured against his lips. "Missed you more." "Impossible." On the drive back to the ranch, Ethan told Jesse everything, the awkward dinners, the slowly thawing conversations, his father's unexpected hug. "I'm proud of you," Jesse said. "I know that wasn't easy." "It wasn't, but it was worth it. I think we're going to be okay, maybe not perfect, but okay." Okay is pretty good, all things considered. As they turned onto the ranch road, Ethan felt a swell of emotion. The cabin came into view, smoke curling from the chimney. Home. "I love you," he said suddenly. Jesse glanced at him, smiling. "I know I love you too." "No, I mean, I really love you, like forever love you, like I want to build a life with you, love you." Jesse pulled the truck to a stop in front of the cabin, turned to face Ethan fully. "Yeah. Yeah, I know it's fast, I know we're young, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You're it for me, Jesse Morrison." Jesse's smile was radiant. "Good, because you're it for me too, Ethan Chen." They kissed until the windows fogged up and the truck's engine cooled. When they finally went inside, the cabin was warm and welcoming, exactly as they'd left it. Exactly as Ethan had remembered it during his 2 weeks away. Home. The wedding was small, held at the ranch on a perfect June day. Just family and close friends, exactly what both Ethan and Jesse wanted. Ethan's parents came. His father still wasn't entirely comfortable with the whole thing, but he showed up. That was enough. His mother cried during the ceremony. Happy tears, she insisted afterward, hugging both of them. Lily was Ethan's best person, as she insisted on being called instead of maid of honor. "Because gender roles are outdated," she explained seriously. Dale officiated, gruff and emotional in equal measure. Maria catered, making enough food to feed 3 times the number of guests. They exchanged vows under the Montana sky, surrounded by the land they both loved and the people who had supported them. I came here running from myself, Ethan said in his vows. And I found you, found home, found the courage to be exactly who I am. You taught me that love means being seen completely and choosing to stay anyway. I choose you, Jesse Morrison, today and every day after. Jesse's vows were simpler but no less meaningful. I spent years thinking I had to leave to find happiness, but happiness was here all along. I just needed the right person to show me. You're that person, Ethan, my home, my heart, my always. There wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. The reception was held in the barn, decorated with wildflowers and string lights. They danced badly to country music, ate too much cake, and laughed until their faces hurt. As the sun began to set, Ethan and Jesse slipped away from the party, walking hand in hand to their favorite spot, the ridge overlooking the valley where they'd first kissed. Happy? Jesse asked, pulling Ethan close. Ridiculously happy? Ethan leaned his head on Jesse's shoulder. 2 years ago I was terrified and closeted and had no idea who I was. Now I'm here, married to you, living the life I never knew I wanted. Any regrets? Not a single one, you. Just that I didn't find you sooner. They stood there as the sky turned pink and gold, the same colors it had been on that first night when Jesse had picked up a lost, scared kid from Lowe's Angels and brought him home. Neither of them could have known then where that drive would lead, the love they'd find, the life they'd build. But looking back now, Ethan couldn't imagine it any other way. He'd come to Montana looking for himself and found so much more: love, family, home, purpose. And Jesse, always Jesse, the shirtless cowboy who had stolen his heart that very first summer and never given it back. What are you thinking about? Jesse asked. About how grateful I am for all of it, the good, the hard, everything that led me to you. Jesse kissed his temple. Me too. They watched the sunset together, wrapped in each other's arms, two men who had each been lost in their own way and found each other exactly when they needed to. The ranch spread out before them, bathed in golden light. In the distance, they could hear laughter from the barn, the party continuing without them. But here, on this ridge, it was just the two of them and the endless Montana sky. Perfect.